Welcome to the SuperContest podcast. Pam Maldonado with my girl Kelly Store, Kelly in Vegas, bringing you 5 against the spread contest picks for week 7 of the NFL. Kelly, my girl, we went 4-1 last week, which is a huge bounce back week from the previous dud that we had. But what do you think that we did differently that may have contributed?
I know the show went long, but I didn't think long. I was very definitive with my opinions. You did the same with yours, and we basically didn't give each other a lot of options.
Well, typically we kind of go back and forth with we agree or we don't agree. Last week we didn't agree on a lot, but I think what we did a little bit differently was we actually went through the games that we didn't like instead of just like, oh, we don't like it, let's ignore it. And because of that, I had also something that we did different was I had kind of I said last week, I love this week. It's a great week. And I ended up having like I love so many games that I have like 3 games that I'm considering as my best bet. Instead of naming it right at the top of the show, which is what I typically do, you and I talked about each one. I eliminated 2, and the best bet that ended up on the card, which was actually my best bet of the week back in Lions, was the only one of the 3 that ended up working out. So I think what I tend to do also is prepping, studying, all of that is a lot different than me listening to back to like a replay, which is what I tend to do before I place my wagers. I listen to our show actually every time, and I'm like, I listen to my inflection. I listen to my confidence. I talked about this game. These points made a lot more sense. And I think by doing that, by speaking it out loud instead of like just prepping and going with it, it allowed me to really eliminate the noise, eliminate the stuff that I had less confidence in, and go with the one, okay, you know what? I like the Lions. And it's not just that I like the Lions. There was a really strong play to back them in the first quarter, which is what led me to making them as my best bet in the first place. So maybe doing a little bit of that again. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with that route of talking with you the games before I announce my best bet, because potentially I may change my mind mid-show like last week where it took third
Yeah,
time the charm.
I should have definitely listened back to the show and talked myself off the Colts. That was my ugly loser of the week. Very frustrating. Just not how I anticipated that game to go. So maybe I'll take your advice this week and listen to us back.
So we did finish 4-1 last week. Kelly's best bets on the season are now 2-4. Mine are 3-3. We're hoping to keep at least the 4-1 momentum, 3-2 momentum going. So just a reminder of what it is that we are doing. We're picking 5 against the spread contest picks in the NFL. These are set lines that are released every Wednesday, and they do not move. So what we talk about are the lines as is. Automatically in is Kelly's best bet. Automatically in is my best bet, and then we together come up with the rest of the card, which has been fun to say the least. But I think, I love the way you handicap. I love the way I handicap. Because of that diversity that we have, it makes for an interesting conversation. That's also a reminder of what I love about the show is you and I don't talk about these games prior. You don't send me a list. I don't send you a list. So it is pure what we think of the matchup in real time as it's happening, which is why we tend to go back and forth. But Kelly, tell me about your best bet this week.
I'll be honest, I didn't love a lot, right? So I did this week exactly what I did last week. I did not look at the games on Sunday night like I had been previously. I waited until Tuesday and I started saying, okay, which teams are passing the eye test? Which teams are passing the math test? And which teams do we know their identity? And I think we do know the identity of the Cardinals at this point in time. While they did start out 3-0 against the spread, those were against NFC East teams, and we spoke about that last week on the show, so I'm not going to get into that any further, but head coach for the Cardinals was the defensive coordinator for the Eagles. 1 + 2 = 3. That being said, since then, this defense has just been problematic, right? Including last week in the second half versus my best bet in the Rams. It was 9-6 first half. Yeah, well, then the defense gave up 20 unanswered. This defense has allowed 31.7 points per game since that 3-0 ATS. They're now 0-3 straight up and 0-3 ATS. The Cardinals have not been putting up the points as well either. They rank 20th NFL in scoring, 19.5 points per game. No James Conner once again. I don't see the defense stepping up in Seattle. Pam, we used the Seahawks in our Survivor this week, and I said, if the Cardinals, who are 1-10 straight up in their last 11 divisional games, can go into Seattle and beat this team, so be it. I thought that this was the week to use Seattle. Usually I don't like using divisional games, but we did last week as well. No disrespect to
Mhm.
Josh Dobbs. I know what he's trying to do. And, Kyler Murray is back at practice. We'll see if something crazy doesn't happen come Sunday. I would be very upset if it did. But look, this Seahawks team, while last week on the road at Seattle, let's take that out, 32.7 points per game, 3-0 straight up in against the spread. We both talked about we leaned Bengals last week. Neither one of us got to the window with them. But I think that Seattle's ceiling is much higher. I expect to see a big win from the Seahawks. I think they're also a great teaser spot.
I don't agree with anything that you said from the Seahawks. I agree most with the teaser aspect of it. Yes, Seattle ended up as our survivor pick, and I'm totally okay doing that. The only thing that I have, which we did end up talking about it prior, which we typically don't, but it's because of the survivor talk, was I lean to the Cardinal side only because there's only literally one little nugget that has me, well, I don't really feel comfortable about backing Seattle against the spread is when Seattle has a lead at any point outside of the fourth quarter, they're 27th in drop back rate. They become a very conservative, run the clock, drain the clock, slow things down. Oh, okay, I'm okay. I'm okay to punt the ball here where we have a comfortable lead. And what happens with stuff like that? Backdoor covers. The Panthers did have a garbage time touchdown, which ended up making the score a lot closer than it actually was. So for that aspect alone, covering an 8-point home spread, that's the only reason. But other than that, I see no reason at all why Seattle should end up losing that game. So just like covering hopefully they have like a 20-point lead and give up like a garbage time touchdown that has no significance to the spread whatsoever. Um, Other than that, I don't hate it.
Okay.
My best my best bet. I have a few options.
Oh
One of
boy.
them one of them you're going to absolutely despise. But it's with your Broncos actually. Broncos +1 at home to the Packers. This is finally a really good matchup for Denver. Miami. Look at the teams that they have faced. Miami, who's number 1 in almost every offensive metric. They face the Jets, who's top 5 or better in every defensive metric. And then they face KC, who no matter what, it's always going to be Mahomes and Kelsey, even in a down year. Their floor is better than most team ceilings. This is a huge game for the running back for the Broncos. You have Jaleel McLaughlin, Javante Williams, even Russell Wilson himself could have a great ground game because the Denver offense actually has an explosive rushing offense, second best in the league for rate of runs to gain 10 plus yards, seventh most rushing yards on runs of 10 or more. Green Bay defense, they've always typically been susceptible against the run. This year is no different. The highest rate of yards allowed via the run game. Now, if this becomes like a defensive battle, then the Denver defense, maybe that's a lot saying. Maybe they have turned a corner because against Mahomes, they only gave up one touchdown. Mahomes had 40 passing attempts and he had only one passing touchdown. Forced the Chiefs to go 1-5 inside the red zone. This to me is a huge mismatch in terms of strength of schedule. The Denver schedule has been absolutely absurd. In Green Bay, look at the offenses that they have faced: Atlanta, New Orleans, Las Vegas, Chicago before Justin Fields found himself. I know that there was like a trend around that you shared or something, but it was something teams that are off a bye on the road, they do well. Trends are meant to be broken. This is why I took the Bears to win their game when they hadn't won in how many games straight. I love Denver at home. Finally, in a positive spot for them to find themselves.
I shared this tweet, and let me see if I can find it. John Ewing on Twitter. Since 2003, road favorites off a bye week, that is 13 days or more, have gone 77, 49, and 2. That is 61%. That fits it. Doesn't mean that you can't play the Packers. Doesn't mean you can't play the Broncos. That's just a trend to help with your handicap. I don't make bets based on trends. Sometimes they keep you off trends. But here's what I do make bets off of. Okay, let's talk about the Broncos. So, Pam, if you saw my tweet, I just talked about how fans are not objectively able to look at their teams. So, here's a quick reminder of me being a Broncos fan. And I'm going to tell you the problem with this team. Number one, Russell Wilson has been sacked almost as many times as Aaron Rodgers. His QBR, 39.8 this year. You want to know who else is worse? Justin
Mm.
Fields, Anthony Richardson, and Desmond Ritter. And that's it. He is getting paid a lot of money to suck really bad. Maybe Pete Carroll knew a little something that I didn't know. Now, let's pivot. Let's talk about this defense that is absolute and utter Swiss cheese. That scares me. Now, have they
against really good quarterbacks.
turned a corner? Maybe. I don't think so. But here's the other caveat. Jordan Love watched that Monday Night Football game before the bye with Grandma. We went to bed at half. He threw 3 interceptions, no touchdown passes. But on paper, Green Bay still outgained the Raiders. So that tells me a little bit of something there. I think Jordan Love is mediocre. That's a really nice word, actually. And the defense is very susceptible to the run. Like you said, maybe Denver can get the running game going. I don't know. Let's put it this way, Pam. I didn't even have the guts to tease Denver over a touchdown. That's how much faith I have in this team. And the total is what, 44? Low total over a touchdown should just be automatic. And I don't understand it. Do I think Denver could possibly muster up a win here? Sure, but I think this garbage game is just untouchable.
Okay. Okay. So then we move on. I still like the Broncos. I wouldn't mind them in a teaser spot. I think this is just like, I mean, when you just
I mean,
look
I
at the
probably shouldn't put
quarterback,
them in a
when
teaser,
you
but I
just look at
just
the teams that they have faced, Miami, Jets, Chiefs, and now you're going up against Jordan Love. Cool. You're going to be fine. Russell Wilson, I think you're going to bounce back. Normal. Great game. Watch him. Player props. That's what I'd be looking for Russell Wilson. All right. Another option then, as a possible best bet. This is I'm going to go ahead and back the Lions each and every week until you prove me otherwise. Lions +3 on the road to the Ravens. This is also strength of schedule. Both can be argument can be made for both sides, but at least for Baltimore quarterbacks faced. They faced CJ Stroud in his first game in the NFL. They faced Joe Burrow, who in week 2, who was absolutely broken in shambles. Gardner Minshew was a backup. Dorian Thompson Robinson, backup for Cleveland, and lost to Kenny Pickett, and then he faced Tannehill. Why all of that absolutely matters is because Detroit, with Jared Goff behind center and the offensive weapons that they have, second in plays of 20 plus yards behind only Miami, second in the league for touchdowns scored from outside the red zone. Why? Because you have wide receivers like Amon-Ra St. Brown. 74% of Detroit scoring are touchdowns. They're not putting up field goals, they are scoring touchdowns. That's the second best rate in the league. Baltimore red zone defense, first in the league. That is a true test. But is it really when you're going against the quarterbacks, all of which that I just mentioned? Looks good on paper. Guys, y'all actually haven't really been tested. Now you're going to. The one concern that you can bring up is that running back David Montgomery, he's out for the Lions. This is a perfect game for Jahmyr Gibbs because Baltimore happens to be vulnerable to receiving backs and tight ends. Gibbs is fourth on team in targets, and Laporta is third. This is a great game for both of those to have great reception props, receiving props. You can also look at the Lamar Jackson against Detroit defense. Mahomes, he did rush for 45 yards. That is the only other mobile quarterback that the Lions have faced. But the problem with the Ravens, they can't score right now. Detroit defense has only given up 3 total rushing touchdowns. Jackson has had 1 or 0 passing touchdowns in 4 of his 6 games. Only in 2 games where he threw for 2 touchdowns were on the road. He has yet to do that at home. Now you have Aiden Hutchinson, one of the best players in the pass rush in the NFL, third most quarterback pressures. Jackson, when he is pressured, 46% completion, 300 total yards versus 950 and 79% clean when he's kept clean. That is the largest completion differential in the league. And when he's pressured, only 2 touchdowns. This is going to be an Aiden Hutchinson game, Jahmyr Gibbs game. I love the Lions. They continue to cover spreads. Why? Because they are complete and they have depth. I love it.
I don't disagree with you, Pam. I wish that I could. I have some concerns about this line. It seems very trappy. I think everybody's going to want to back the Lions, and rightfully so. I don't think the bookmakers are quite moving this team up the way that they need to. Could you say that their win at Kansas City was impressive? I would, but I've heard lots of sharp guys say they're not. Then they beat the Falcons and the Packers, right? They lost at home to Seattle, which I think is still something they are getting like an asterisk for, right? And then they beat up on the lowly Panthers. Now, I liked them last week, as did you. And that was more of a play against the Bucks. I would agree with you. Lions are a very complete team. Plus, you've got the Ravens coming back from London. Again, the jet lag, whether people want to say it's worth a point or not, it is in my book. And also how inept this offense was. They put up a ton of yards and then just kept settling for field goals. You know how I know that? Because I watched the entire game start to finish because I bet the over. Pam, there's 8 field goals in that game. This team has problems in the red zone, and I don't know why. You should not struggle against the Tennessee Titans in the red zone. Do I have
Mhm.
this team being a top 4 team in the NFC? Yeah. So the Ravens laying 3 against, let's put it this way. I have both of these teams in the top 5 in the NFC. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a coin flip type game. I can see something crazy happening here. The Ravens should be able to run, but the Lions defense do have a Lions run defense is good as well. I
Mhm.
really have no opinion here. I've went back and forth on this game all week long, and I don't think there's any value here. I could see this game going either way in the last 5 minutes.
I like to back dogs when I think they can win. So I have confidence that the Lions come out with the win because of the red zone struggles that Baltimore is having. If you're putting up more field goals than you are, and you've seen Justin Tucker like as perfect of a not like he's a god at this point with just like an insane power that he has in his leg to make some of these insane long field goals. But he's actually why? Because now because you know that your team is struggling in the red zone. They're not just leaving it up to Justin Tucker to be like, hey man, we're 60 yards out. Can you kick one for us? And then he's missed. Like he's now has 2 of those misses, which is like, hey, that's like a doesn't sound like a big deal. He's a kicker from 60 yards out, but when you're Justin Tucker, that's kind of expected from you now. But now they're coming too reliant of it. So because of that, like if this becomes into like a field goal game and you're relying on just Justin Tucker to make like a 60 yarder, give me the Lions all day when they're up one with a better. I feel like they have like the more. I mean, they're just more complete. I have confidence that the Lions are coming out with a win, not just a cover, which is why I like it potentially as my best bet. Okay, I will pencil that in as my best bet. The only other game that I love as a best is the Chargers plus 5.5 against the Chiefs.
We're in agreement
Because
there.
it's
I'm
just
not going to
full
argue with the
history.
Chargers.
Well, I do wanna talk about it just because, of course,
No,
I'm
I
not gonna
want
say,
you to
"Hey,
talk
we
about it, but
agree.
I'm
Let's
just
plug it
letting you
in."
know you're not going to get any. You're not going to get any pushback from me there.
Okay, well, just for the people who are watching, why I love it, is because Herbert is just really good history against the Chiefs. Yes, they are 2-4 in wins losses, but in those 3 losses, lost by exactly 3 points. He has 15 total touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 67 plus completion in 5 of 6 of those games. Chargers 3's losses this year, very competitive losses. Combined 8 points total, high-powered offense against Miami, Tennessee in overtime, Dallas, Herbert threw an interception under the 2-minute mark. That could have easily been a win, if not a cover, going into overtime, potentially there. But Chiefs against Denver, I was really I'm impressed. I'm continuously be unimpressed with the Chiefs and what they're producing. 1 touchdown, 4 field goals. They also have red zone problems similar to that of the Ravens. 13 of 24 inside the red zone, but that's because the Chiefs win a perfect 5-5 against the Bears in week 3, and the only score of which that they scored 27 points or more. And then the other was Minnesota going for a perfect 3 for 3. If you eliminate those 2 perfect games that they had, they're 5-16 inside the red zone. This is an opportunity for Chargers as bad of a defense as they have. This is a Chargers opportunity to suppress the Chiefs continue to have some of those red zone problems. Justin Herbert is fully capable as a quarterback with the offensive weapons of Eckler, Keenan Allen going up against a and I will say susceptible, penetrable defense. Put up some points and get us to cover 5.5. I know you're in agreement with it, so I'm not trying to argue here, but anything else to add?
No, I would agree with you. Kansas City's offense just isn't clicking. I don't think Travis Kelsey's 100%. I don't think Patrick Mahomes is 100%. And it's not that they're bad because they still rank in the top 5 in total offense. They're just not scoring at that like high efficiency I think that we're used to seeing, right? Defense really has saved them on multiple occasions, which is very strange to see, right? So I could see why everybody wants to back the Chiefs here. You have the Chargers off just like a completely low performance, right? 2017 final at home. I mean, the Chargers defense is abysmal as well, but in a divisional game, we know that the Chargers are going to step up here. I was trying to find their ATS record versus the Chiefs just so that I
The
had a little
only
something for myself here,
the
just
only
a little
the
added
only
boost.
argument that I would expect you to have is that it's Brandon Staley as a head coach.
No, he's terrible. Chargers 3-15 straight up in their last 18 against Kansas City. Normally, I love these 5.5 point underdogs to win outright. And that's the only thing that scares me is that I don't know if they can win this game outright.
What's their spread record against the Chiefs? I would imagine
Uh,
that it's gotta be
they've
with
covered
just
they've covered 5 of their last 6. So
I was gonna say, with Justin Herbert, it's gotta be a perfect against the spread because all the
6
losses
of their
were
last
against
8. It's not perfect. 6 of their last 8 in Kansas City. So it's close though. I mean,
but 2 of those wins that Herbert does have were at Kansas. So he can
I
go
mean
into
2
Arrowhead.
so 2 okay. So out of the last 8 games in Kansas City, 6 ATS winners.
Well, only 6 of those games had Justin Herbert.
Okay.
So I would be looking at the last 6. So they've gotta be at least 5-1 because one of those games they had lost by 6 points, and the other 3 losses were by 3 exact. So 9 points total, 3 each. So they've gotta be minimum 5-1 against the spread. They are 2-4 straight up with Justin Herbert, but those 2 wins were at Arrowhead. Other than Brandon Staley being your head coach, I really don't have a
He
problem with this
sucks.
because
It's so
he's so
frustrating.
terrible.
It really
But
is,
it's
man.
all
I don't know what else to do. He is frustrating. I thought Anthony Lynn was a pain in my ass. I mean, Brandon Staley, come on. That was like the Bonehead Bowl. I had the Chargers tease because what do we do? What do? They stay in score game. So
same.
this is by definition
This
a
is
one
Brandon
score
as well.
game. Chargers lose by a field goal. So be it.
I think they go and win. We'll plug that in. So then that will be on automatically on our card since we are both in full agreement. Is there any game that you love that we have not?
There's nothing that I love this week, college or NFL. I just don't love anything, Pam. But let's talk about some situations maybe that we could look to back some teams. So the only 2 things I have played this weekend, I did play the Steelers. Or excuse me, I did play this. I did play the Seahawks. I did play the Chargers. The one that is on my long list that I'm considering playing is the Steelers +3. There's going to be a lot to do about Mike Tomlin off a bye. And I think that accounts for something. But here's my problem. Pittsburgh probably didn't deserve to win in week 5 prior to that bye when they beat the
Right.
Ravens. I will take that all day, though. I had them in a teaser, which I didn't need them to win, but at least I got that. But this team is kind of finding ways to win. I didn't think they deserved to win at Las Vegas either. The Rams last week was my best bet, but they were slow in the first half. My only thing is like Cooper Cup, man, he's just like right back at it. Like he was
Yeah.
never hurt, right? So I do think that there's some issues with the Steelers offensively. We know that, but I like the situation. Tomlin off a bye is almost an automatic play on for me, but I needed to see just a little bit more, and I haven't really been able to find it. That's been kind of my one caveat. So I just have them on my long list. I do a show with John Murray from the Westgate, and he confirmed that the Sharps did play the Steelers, and I still didn't rush to hurry up and bet the 3. I don't see this moving off 3. So
No.
kind of just hanging out here. Pittsburgh's defense has in their wins, they've done really well. 16.7 points per game. In their losses, they've given up 30. So I just feel like
Right.
this is just one of those games. Like, which Steelers team are we going to get? Because they're not going to win in a shootout.
Well, I will say about this week, what I hated about this week, is that there's 7 games that are lined 2.5 for 3, and I hate games that are lined 2.5 for 3. Like you're calling for the winner, and it's very difficult to go ahead and do. However, I am in agreement with you in backing the Steelers +3 on the road to the Rams, and it's because this is the Pittsburgh defense against Matthew Stafford. There was one week actually where you ended up taking Stafford. Was it not Stafford? It was you ended up
I mean, when
backing
I took the
them at
Rams versus the Eagles,
yeah, there you go. You ended up taking the Rams against the Eagles. That's what it was. And I had in my notes the one thing that I had my as my worry was that Stafford is not throwing passing touchdowns. He has only 6 on the season, and the Eagles are vulnerable against passing touchdowns, very good against rushing. And that's exactly came to fruition. The Rams couldn't even knock them in on the ground. Now you're having to rely on Stafford. This is the same type of setup. The Pittsburgh defense is top 10 in allowing rushing touchdowns, but they are bottom 5 in allowing passing scores. Stafford doesn't throw passing touchdowns. I don't know if he's injured. I don't know if he doesn't have the confidence. Whatever it is, he doesn't have that connection. You can give up yardage with Cooper Cup, but you're still not converting those into touchdowns. He has only 6 on the season, 5 thrown interceptions. Pittsburgh defense is the 11th best in pressure rate and 9th best in sack rate. Stafford, when he is pressured, one of the worst quarterbacks. 39% completion, only 1 touchdown. So you're already bad with the passing game, and now you're even worse when you're pressured, and now you're going up against a team that can pressure you. And that was one of the reasons why I liked the Rams last week because the Cardinals don't pressure. So now this is a complete 180 coming off, and like you said, off a bye. So they have extra time to prepare for how to attack Stafford and prevent some of that and knock him on the ground. Do you want to go ahead and lock this one in? I know it's not as confident,
Yeah,
but we
because
both are in full agreement
that's
with it.
about the only other thing that I even really remotely have an opinion on. As you mentioned, lots of 2.5, 3 games. I tweeted out earlier, Pam. I'm in a ton of teasers this week. Like it's just one of those weeks where I just don't love very much.
Well, let me go ahead and ask you about another one. I know you hate Broncos, but let's talk about how about the Falcons plus 2.5 at the Bucks. The Bucks secondary, it isn't terrible, but it's absolutely penetrable. Even with Desmond Ritter, I cannot believe that I am saying that. Progressions are being made with him as a quarterback. Atlanta is throwing 67 more dropbacks than this time last year. So they are being forced to throw the ball more. Granted, it's because they're playing from behind situations, but at least he is pulling in those reps, and they are making progressions in the passing game. Throwing the ball more does mean a lot more volatility with the interceptions, but at least he's gaining yardage because Ritter last week had 3 thrown interceptions, yet he still threw for 307 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. If you look at the Bucks defense, they're 25th in pressure rate, they're 26th in pressure rate when they blitz. So if you keep Ritter clean, which is a huge possibility in this game, he's actually pretty darn good, which is something that I wouldn't have expected to say. 69% completion, 7 YPA, 5 of his 6 touchdowns have come when he's been kept clean. Now you're going up against a team that doesn't pressure. Tampa Bay doesn't run the ball. We know this about them. They're bottom 3. So now already you're entering every game you play in a deficit because you're only a one-dimensional offense. So you're going to have to rely on Baker Mayfield. The Atlanta secondary is pretty good against subpar quarterbacks, holding 4 of the 6 quarterbacks that they have played to 60% completion or less. The only ones who have surpassed that was Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence when they were getting stomped on. Held all 6 quarterbacks to under 250 passing yards, allowing to no more than 1 touchdown in 4 games. Mayfield has 1 interception in each of his last 3 games. Interceptions are a possibility here. Desmond Ritter could actually outshine Baker Mayfield and look more experienced. What do you think about Atlanta? I also like them to
Yeah,
get the win.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I actually don't do a ton of prop bets, but I've been working with a company called Better that does only props. And they asked me for a best bet, and I said Baker Mayfield under passing yards. His offensive
Yep.
line is not giving him any time. I've watched this Bucks team on a couple of occasions this year, and I haven't seen enough from them offensively. The Baker Mayfield that waltzed into Minneapolis and got the win over the Vikings is not the Baker Mayfield that we're seeing on the field right now. One caveat
Mm-mm.
is Desmond Ritter, very frustrating. If you look at the stat box, Pam, so I did not get to watch very many games last week. If you just look at the stat box between the Commanders and the Falcons and what we saw, Atlanta, you it would have never questioned. If you just showed me the stat box, I would have said Atlanta won this football game, but they didn't. They outgained the Commanders in every possible
Agree.
metric, yet they
They
didn't
had
win the game.
interceptions.
So we're going to find out. The rubber's going to meet the road here. Like I said, I like the Falcons in a teaser. I did it so many teasers this week. But I don't blame you here for liking the Falcons. Maybe I'll get the guts to actually back them. But for now, I'm just going to take lots of unders on the Bucks offense.
Okay, fine. Another option. We're running out of options. How about the Dolphins as
Why?
an
I
underdog
think
to
we
the
should
Eagles?
absolutely lock in the. I think we should absolutely lock in the Falcons.
You like the Falcons.
I do. I told you I like the Falcons. I'm not
Oh,
going to
yeah.
bet them, but no,
It sounded like
I
you
put
were
them in.
like, I like them, but not enough to. Okay.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. You just said Dolphins too. Everybody's going to want to rush to buy low. This is the Lions game that we talked about last week when I was like the Bucks are mid. The Eagles are mid.
They really are. So anytime that this is the okay, I think I like this one better than the Falcons. So let's talk about it. The Dolphins
Okay.
plus 2.5 on the road to the Eagles. Fading the Eagles last week was absolute money. Didn't expect the Jets to come out with the outright win, but I really loved the situation spot for the Jets being at home. Great defense. Now this is the Eagles going up against a really good offense. But more importantly, anytime that you have a change in the offensive line, I want to fade that team. Philadelphia offensive line. Left guard, Sua Opeta. He is a backup to Cam Jurgens at right guard. Already played 1 game. Really didn't have a great game last week. We saw it come to fruition against the Jets. Right tackle, Lane Johnson, ankle sprain. Once he left the game, Hurts was pressured on 45% of his dropbacks. That is one player making a significant difference. That's a problem when you're going up against the 5th graded pass rush in the league. Eagle secondary. Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson. We know how mad I talk about Zach Wilson every week. He had his second highest QBR by his standards. That was pretty good game for him. The second most completions that he's had of the season against the Eagles secondary. All I said was he needed to be basic, and that's what he produced. He produced basicness, and he got them the win. Miami offense doesn't punt. They're first for the having the least punts in the league. They have the highest touchdown rate. 30 of 35 of the Miami scores have been touchdowns. That's the most in the league. And doesn't experience third downs often. They have the lowest rate. And if they do have a third down, they convert at the seventh highest. So, I mean, this is just a really good Dolphins offense. I know you faded them against the Bills, but that was more of a situational spot of them coming off like a
Well, it was
super
also
great game.
and it was also a divisional spot. Completely
Mhm.
different when it's a
Okay.
divisional game.
So this one is a better situational
Uh,
spot.
no, this isn't a situational spot to me. This is a offense that is producing at the highest efficiency rate in the NFL,
Hmm.
and the Eagles, everybody expecting for them to have some bounce back. I put the Dolphins in a teaser, absolutely at 2.5. I know this one got bet up from 1.5 to 2.5, which isn't a big deal. If it went to 3, I might be a little scared if we were being honest here. And it could. It could. We could see a ton of sharp money coming in on them. But John Murray reported yesterday that the Dolphins is who took the sharp money. I was surprised to hear that. I figured this was going to be just like the Lions. It was going to be super square. I don't really care. I don't think this Miami team is who they were last year. I don't think this offensive line is as good as they were last year. Jalen Hurts, more interceptions. Remember why I faded them against the Rams and I faded them against the Bucks. And maybe those are just middle of the tier teams. Miami is the best offense in the NFL. And that's not up for debate. Are they the best
Right.
overall team in the NFL? No. Their defense has some issues. I have
Absolutely.
I have Miami power rated 4 and Philadelphia power rated 5.
Hmm.
So there's not, I mean, the line is the line. It's pretty close to being correct. On a neutral field, I'd say it's 1. I'd probably give I'd probably give Miami -1. If this game was in Miami, the line would be flipped. It'd be Dolphins -2.5. I don't have like some really big edge other than questioning who is the better team overall, right? You have 2 5-1 teams. You've got the Miami Dolphins who lost to the Bills in division, and then you've got the Eagles who maybe just finally started to have regression not go their way. Jalen Hurts played a really good Jets defense. Mind you, I said this on another show today, Pam, that I am very glad Aaron Rodgers is not the quarterback because if this team is able to win teams with Zach Wilson,
Zach
I would be
Wilson.
absolutely screwed on 9.5. A 9.5, I would be hating my life. This defense is really good for the Jets. So I think we need to give them a little bit of credit there as well. But
Yes.
yeah, I think catching points here with the Dolphins, it seems too easy, but it was too easy to take 3 or to lay 3 with the Lions last week too. Some of these teams just aren't passing the eye test, and Philadelphia is not one of them for me.
They are finding ways to win, but honestly, this just
They
comes
are.
down to you have offensive line problems. Great. I want to run to the window to fade you because if you have a left guard who's now playing right guard, and if you have the best offensive lineman on your team now having an ankle sprain, how productive are you going to be going up against a really good pass rush? Miami, maybe they're giving up yardage and points, but they have a really good pass rush as well. This is going to be, and then you have Jalen Hurts coming off of their bad game. His interception prop, he threw multiple interceptions last week. I wish there was an option for that one instead of just taking one at plus 130. But how are they going to bounce back because they're so used to dominating and now you're coming off a loss? And it wasn't like a loss where like, oh, we kind of like slept on it. No, it was a bad loss. And now you're going up
Can,
against you just came off going off against one of the best defenses, and now you're going up against one of the best offenses who actually also happens to be a really good pass rush. Good luck.
Did you
I think I
see
like the
the highlights of after he threw those interceptions, Pam? It was
Mm-mm.
just like he went back to the bench, like, oh, well. Like, it was like almost like he didn't care. So I
Ooh,
don't know how to like read that. Does he not care because he's getting paid a ton of money? Is he good at just brushing them off? Because 3 interceptions
3
is
interceptions.
bad. It's
Yeah.
That's bad. That's bad quarterback play, right? And you kind of got to think about that. And as you mentioned, losing Lane Johnson is not good. That is going to put lots more pressure on him. And Hertz is going to have to make quicker decisions. That does not mean he's going to make better decisions necessarily, right? Obviously, he's
Johnson
got
isn't
stud.
out, he is just questionable, so I'm
Oh,
not
he's
sure if he's gonna be
questionable. Okay,
the
I'm sorry. I thought you said he was
last
out.
update was Oc the last update was 3 days ago, so
Okay.
from Johnson.
Yeah, I mean,
But at least but it is still offensive line woes going up against a really good
yeah,
pass rush. I think I like this
I
one
like
better
it.
than the Falcons, but I still do like the Falcons. Do you wanna plug the Dolphins in?
Yeah, let's plug the Dolphins in.
Well, then, at least we have 4 games right now. Your best bet of taking the Seahawks -8 to the Cardinals, Chargers, Steelers, Dolphins, and then the 2 that we have on the back burner are Falcons +2.5 and the Lions +3. Is there any other matchup? Let me scroll through. Raiders, Bears want nothing to do with because Jimmy G is
Woof.
hurt, Justin Fields is out.
I
Washington
think
Giants
Jimmy G is going to be out too. So if you see
Washington
this and you haven't
Giants, you
heard
got
that,
Tyrod Taylor. Browns, Colts, you
I
have DTR, is it Watson, and then Minshew. There's just like a lot of backup quarterback situations that I'd like to avoid. So because of that, we're kind of left with limited options. So if you had to give me, I mean, if you had to give me like an option between these two, I would pick the Lions because they're complete. It's that simple, and you got a great coach. Falcons is a far more suspect against that. The only other option that I had, and I told the producers before taping, I was like, well, get a graphic up for the Bills if we got nothing else. If we got nothing else, then we have to revert to the Bills -8.5 to the Patriots.
oh God, I think the Bills are a great teaser spot. I think it looks like a touchdown game, right? Bill Belichick in the division. I'm not impressed with how Buffalo's been playing. They had just
No,
came back from London themselves. If you remember, we were on the Jags. Ugh, let's
we're
just be
fade.
honest.
Leave it
Yeah,
alone.
it's terrible. Bill Belichick, they're talking about firing Bill Belichick. Now, I don't think they're going to do it in the middle of the season, right?
Right.
But are the Patriots tanking now to get Caleb Williams? I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of question marks surrounding this Pats team that I don't have answers to. So I really have no desire to lay it with Buffalo, but I can't
So
give Bill Belichick the benefit of the doubt any longer, Pam.
So just some general chatter then. Buffalo is 4-0 straight up and against the spread against New England. And I was looking at the Bill side because New England offense is the only team in the NFL to be averaging fewer than a point, 1 point per drive. That is absolutely dead last in
Jeez.
the league. They are 31st in trips to the red zone. Mac Jones, he's becoming Mr. Turnover Jones, 7 interceptions, 5 in his last 3 games. And Buffalo forces turnovers at the highest rate. So this is a bounce back spot for the Bills to look like the typical Bills again because you're going up against literally probably the worst offense in the league right now. But other than
Is
that, if you don't like Bills, then we got to also look at just the Falcons +2.5 at the Bucks, or I would feel more confident with the Lions +3 at the Ravens.
a couple questions. I haven't seen, I just tried to look. Obviously, Josh Allen is going to play, but we know that he's kind of had this shoulder, a banged up
Yeah,
shoulder, right?
and it's his throwing
So
shoulder. That's the question mark.
yeah. So
So
it's
eliminate
kind of
that.
tough. I will say that. So if it has to be Kyle Allen, that scares the crap out of me. We'll
All
say
right,
that.
so
But I do
Lions
think
+3 because they're healthy. They got a good quarterback, great coach, great defense. And Lamar Jackson can't throw a passing touchdown.
fine.
At least there's weaknesses for the opponent. That's what you're trying to look for. The Bucks, it's either Baker Mayfield who can't do anything, but you also have Desmond Ridder on the other side, or fade Lamar Jackson,
I'll
who the
fade
Lions
Baker
at
all
least have been
day.
tested.
I mean, like I said, in a divisional spot, sign me up. Teasers galore this week. So this will give me a little bit more to cheer for, at least on Sunday now.
So Falcons +2.5 at the Bucks or Lions +3 at the Ravens.
Don't care.
You can't do that because I
I
went
have
with
to
the
pick.
Chargers.
Why do I have to pick?
Because I went with the Chargers last week as our 5th pick, and it ended up not covering, though it should have. I mean, that was a 2.5, and they lost by
That was
3. So
frustrating.
close. Lions, I think they win.
I'd rather take a divisional road underdog just based on how well they performed this year, but then I already bet against a divisional road underdog with Seattle, so I can't really use that as my argument.
And the Lions are also like super cover machines.
Yes, they have been. They just keep trugging along. All right, let's see what else I got about the Lions here. Lions 5-1, 4-4 in a row. Detroit non-conference road game is the least important game on their schedule. They lead the NFC North by 2.5 games, tied for the best record with Philadelphia and San Francisco. 2 straight road game. That is interesting. I'd love to see some stats about 2 straight road games. Lions are very well coached. You're right. Lamar Jackson It's not going to be able to run. They have red zone woes. Let's go Lions.
Let's go Lions. All right. Well, then those are our 5 against the spread contest picks. We figured it out. Kelly's best bet is the Seahawks -8 to the Cardinals. My best bet, I am going to roll with the Chargers +5.5 at Chiefs. That's official. Steelers +3 at the Rams. Dolphins +2.5 at the Eagles. And Lions +3 at the Ravens. Those are our 5 against the spread contest picks. Do make sure to follow Kelly on Twitter at Kelly in Vegas. You can follow me on Twitter at Pamela M35. And that does it for another episode of